today I have Paradox here, who's going to help me demonstrate aspects of the orthopedic evaluation. Now, we've already talked about observation in the consulting room, observation of the cat moving around, and now we move on to the hands-on part of the orthopedic evaluation. But we're still a little ways away from manipulating the joints. We've got a couple of other things that we need to address first. The first thing I like to do is just stroke the patient, just run my hands down, and what I'm doing here is I'm making an assessment of whether or not there's excessive hypersensitivity, which I think can be indicative of maladaptive pain or a neuropathic-like pain state. As I run my hands down, the question I'm trying to answer is, do I see and feel twitching of the skin and fasciculation of the muscles under my fingers? And so, for example, as you're running your hands down, you might see the skin doing this. Now I'm moving my fingers, but I'm just trying to show you what the skin twitching would look like. And I'm sure you've all seen that in patients. At the same time, under my fingers, I'm feeling to assess whether or not there's muscle fasciculation, whether those muscles are twitching and moving, the micro contractions underneath. Now, Paradox is very relaxed here. There's no twitching of the skin. There's no muscle fasciculation. Now, that twitching of the skin, that muscle fasciculation, certainly can be associated with things like flea allergy and other dermatological conditions. But it can also be indicative of that maladaptive pain state, that neuropathic pain state, which I believe in cats can come on much more readily in association with long-standing joint pain than we might see in dogs. So again, just running our fingers down, making an assessment of whether or not we see this twitching of the skin and feel muscle fasciculation underneath. Then as we move on, the next part of the orthopedic evaluation is to assess muscle mass. And with Paradox relaxed here on the table, I like to start by assessing the upper forelimb muscle mass. So we have the spine of the scapula is in this direction on either side. I'm going to take my fingers perpendicular to the spine of the scapula and feel the supraspinatus and then the infraspinatus muscles, just rocking back and forth, making an assessment of whether or not I think the muscle mass is appropriate bilaterally and whether one side is showing signs of muscle atrophy. And again, with Paradox in this comfortable seated position, I can then move my hands caudally here and make an assessment of the gluteal muscle mass over the pelvis. As we move on to the other major muscle masses, we need to get Paradox up so that we can extend the limbs and use our fingers to feel the muscle mass. So with my right hand here, I'm just gently lifting Paradox up. And with my left hand, just finger and thumb here. I think that's, if you just limit it to 2 fingers, that tends to increase the sensitivity. I'm feeling the mass of the triceps muscles here. And then if I swap my hands over, I can do the same thing with my right hand on the other side, and then come back and make a comparative assessment on the left. With Paradox in the same position, I can now come to the hind limbs. And again, just using a finger and thumb, make an assessment of the quadriceps. So here's the stifle, here's the patella, and just in there make an assessment of the quadriceps muscle mass. And then I can move my thumb caudally around the back of the hind limb, just lifting Paradox up a little bit, make an assessment of the hamstrings here. And again, if I swap my hands over, what you can't see is that I'm doing the same thing on the opposite side here with my right hand, assessing the quadriceps and then the hamstrings. And I just bounce back and forth doing that, making an assessment of whether or not muscle mass overall is normal and whether there's any difference between the right and the left sides.